For so long, you've been working hard to manifest your dreams without realizing that the effort itself quietly suggests you don't already have what you're asking for. But what if your desire isn't waiting somewhere ahead of you? What if it already exists, complete and finished, simply waiting for you to recognize it? Stay with this idea, because once you understand why your role is to remember instead of manifest, the way you see reality may never be the same again. Stop chasing manifestations. Stop trying to force life to deliver what you want. Stop treating your dream as if it's sitting somewhere in the future, waiting for the perfect moment before it belongs to you. The moment you begin trying to manifest, you're unknowingly making a powerful statement. You're telling yourself that what you want isn't here yet. You're accepting separation. You're reinforcing the gap between yourself and your desire. Your subconscious accepts that belief, and reality faithfully reflects it back to you. The biggest mistake isn't that people fail to imagine clearly. It isn't that they don't have enough faith or desire. The real misunderstanding is believing your dream has to be created, when in truth it only needs to be remembered. Think about how memory works. You never struggle to remember something you know already happened. You don't force yourself to believe yesterday was real. You don't repeat affirmations to convince yourself of a memory. You simply know it happened. Memory carries a quiet certainty. There's no pressure, no desperation, no fear. There's only calm acceptance. Now apply that same feeling to your desire. Instead of seeing it somewhere ahead of you, picture it as something that's already behind you. Imagine the promotion has already happened. The relationship has already flourished. The money has already arrived. Your healing is already complete. Your dream is no longer a possibility. It has become a memory. Notice how different that feels. When something is only a possibility, doubt immediately appears. The mind starts asking how, when, and whether it can happen. It searches for proof, looks for signs, and calculates the odds. But memories don't need proof. They don't require explanations. They're already complete. This is why so many people stay trapped in endless manifestation techniques. They believe repeating affirmations creates results. They think more visualization means faster manifestations. They keep searching for the perfect method because they assume something is missing. But no technique has power if it's rooted in the feeling of not already having what you want. You can repeat affirmations all day long, but if your deeper belief says you are still waiting, then waiting is exactly what your life continues to reflect. You can spend hours visualizing, but if you finish believing, your desire still belongs to tomorrow. Tomorrow is where it remains. Reality doesn't respond to wishes. It responds to your assumptions. It reflects who you believe yourself to be, not how much effort you make. The moment you stop trying to obtain your desire and begin remembering it as already yours, your identity begins to change. Take an honest look at your life. Every circumstance surrounding you today was first accepted within. Some beliefs formed intentionally, others developed through childhood, repeated experiences, emotional moments, or years of conditioning. Yet every one of them eventually became part of your reality because, consciously or not, you accepted them as true. The outside world never created your inner beliefs. Your inner beliefs shape the world you now experience. If that principle explains the situations you no longer want, then it also explains the life you long to live. So the real question isn't whether you have the ability to manifest your dream. The real question is whether you can remember it. Can you sit quietly and feel how natural it is to already be the person you desire to become? Can you experience the peace and relief that come after fulfillment? Can you begin thinking from your wish fulfilled instead of constantly thinking about it? That single shift changes everything. Most people spend their lives thinking about money, success, love, health, or freedom. But thinking about something is completely different from thinking from it. When you think about wealth, you're often aware of not having enough. When you think from wealth, you naturally experience life as someone who already lives in abundance. Thinking about love highlights loneliness. Thinking from love creates the quiet confidence of already being valued and deeply loved. Thinking about success focuses on obstacles. Thinking from success naturally recognizes opportunities everywhere. Your outer world always reflects the state of consciousness you consistently live in. That's why remembering is far more powerful than trying to manifest. Manifesting often carries the feeling that something still needs to happen. Remembering carries the feeling that it's already yours. Manifesting focuses on changing the world. Remembering awakens your awareness, and awareness is where every creation begins. You might wonder, how can I remember something that hasn't happened yet? The answer lies in understanding imagination. Imagination isn't fantasy or wishful thinking. It's the creative force behind every experience. Before anything becomes visible in the physical world, it first exists within consciousness as an imaginal experience. Imagination isn't separate from reality. It is the birthplace of reality. When you vividly imagine an experience and inwardly accept it as true, you plant a seed in consciousness. Every seed contains the power to become what it was created to be, and every seed unfolds at the right time. Your job isn't to force the process. Your job is simply to remain faithful to what you've accepted within. Think about a gardener planting a seed. They don't dig it up every day to see if it's growing. They trust the invisible process beneath the soil. They water it, care for it, and allow nature to do the rest. Yet many people imagine their desired life, then immediately destroy that inner work with doubt. They picture financial abundance, then spend the rest of the day worrying about money. They imagine a loving relationship, then return to feeling unwanted. They see themselves succeeding, then allow fear of failure to take over. For a few moments they remember, but for the rest of the day they return to forgetting. Reality can't consistently reflect a state you visit only briefly, while spending most of your time identified with its opposite. This is why persistence matters. But it's not persistence through struggle. It's persistence in remaining loyal to your new identity. Stay faithful to the reality you've already accepted within. When circumstances seem to disagree, remain faithful. When logic tells you otherwise, remain faithful. When appearances suggest nothing is changing, remain faithful. The world you see today is simply the result of yesterday's assumptions. It is delayed evidence of previous states of consciousness. If you allow today's circumstances to determine what you believe about tomorrow, you remain trapped in old patterns. Instead, let your chosen inner state define your reality. Accept inwardly what you want to experience outwardly. Think from it, feel from it, respond from it. Live as though it is already an unquestioned fact until it becomes completely natural rather than something you have to practice. Think about the things you already know. You never wake up reminding yourself of your own name. You don't convince yourself where you live. You simply know. Your fulfilled desire must eventually carry that same effortless certainty. It should become something you recognize as yours instead of something you're constantly trying to obtain. Once that feeling becomes natural, life begins organizing itself around your assumption. The right people enter your life. Unexpected opportunities appear. Circumstances shift in ways your logical mind could never have planned. Because these changes often unfold through ordinary events, many people overlook the miracle taking place. They expect dramatic signs or sudden announcements that everything has changed. But creation is usually quiet. The greatest transformations happen beneath the surface before anyone can see them. A seed opens underground long before a flower blooms above the soil. In the same way, your desired reality is formed within consciousness long before it becomes visible in your everyday life. Trust that unseen process without hesitation. Many people struggle because they place their faith in visible evidence instead of consciousness itself. They refuse to believe until they see proof. But proof always follows belief. It never comes first. If evidence arrived before faith, there would be no need to believe at all. The creative power asks only one thing from you: accept the finished result. Don't worry about the path, the timing, or the details of how it will happen. Accept that it's already complete. Accept that it already belongs to you. Accept that the reality you desire already exists. Then allow yourself to rest. There is incredible strength in that kind of rest. Not simply resting your body, but resting your mind. It's the peace that comes from certainty, the calm that comes from knowing, the quiet confidence that comes from remembering. When you truly remember, the struggle disappears. Fear begins to fade. Doubt loses its grip. You stop asking when, because you no longer experience yourself as separated from your desire. You've entered a state where fulfillment feels completely normal, and that is the real secret. Many believe powerful emotions or intense effort produce results. In truth, it's what feels natural that shapes reality. Whatever becomes natural within you is what life eventually reflects. Anything that feels unfamiliar continues to feel out of reach. That's why there's no need to force excitement or create intense emotions. You don't have to convince yourself with dramatic feelings. Instead, settle into the quiet certainty that it has already happened. Allow fulfillment to feel familiar. Let success become something you naturally expect. Let abundance feel normal. Let love become an ordinary part of your identity. The more natural your desired reality feels within you, the more completely your consciousness accepts it as true. And once it is accepted inwardly, the outer world will eventually reflect it. There is incredible power in a belief that has been fully accepted. Entire lives can change because someone transforms the way they see themselves. A person who once identified with lack begins identifying with possibility. Someone who always believed they were unlucky starts expecting blessings. A person who felt powerless awakens to their own creative power. Everything changes because identity changes. So today's invitation isn't to keep trying to manifest, it's to remember. Remember the version of yourself who has already succeeded. Remember the version of you who has already received everything you desired. Remember the person you have already become. That version isn't somewhere outside of you. It has always been you, simply waiting to be recognized. The distance between your current life and the one you desire isn't measured by time, effort, circumstances, or miles. It's measured only by who you identify yourself as. The instant you identify with the fulfilled version of yourself, that distance disappears. The moment you stop seeking and begin remembering, you move from endlessly becoming into simply being. And being is the true secret behind creation. So stop asking when your manifestation will arrive. Stop searching for signs that it's getting closer. Stop judging your progress by what your eyes currently see. Stop treating your desire like something waiting in the future. Instead, become still and remember. Remember that it's already complete. Remember that it already belongs to you. Remember that your desired reality isn't waiting to be created. It is waiting to be recognized. This perspective may seem unusual because from childhood you've been conditioned to believe the outside world creates your experience. You were taught to trust appearances more than your own consciousness. You learn to react to visible facts instead of realizing those facts are simply the results of earlier assumptions. Because of that conditioning, whenever circumstances seem unfavorable, it's easy to believe they're permanent. But nothing is truly permanent except the state of consciousness you continue to occupy. A state is simply your habitual way of being. It's the combination of your beliefs, emotions, expectations, and automatic reactions that together form your identity. Most people move through these states without even realizing it. One disappointment leads them into an identity of discouragement. A setback becomes an identity of failure. Rejection turns into insecurity. Then they wonder why life keeps bringing more experiences that match those feelings. The answer is simple. Consciousness is always expressing itself through the world around you. Whatever consistently fills your inner world eventually takes shape in your outer experience. That's why trying to change circumstances directly often feels exhausting. You're attempting to change the shadow while leaving the object creating it untouched. You're trying to alter the reflection without transforming its source. The moment the source changes, the reflection must change with it. Imagine standing in front of a mirror and disliking what you see. No matter how hard you try to adjust the reflection itself, nothing changes. The image only changes when the person standing before the mirror changes first. Reality works exactly the same way. Your world faithfully reflects the state of consciousness from which you're living. Once you truly understand this, you begin to appreciate why remembering is so powerful. The moment you remember something, you naturally identify with it. You stop chasing it. You stop longing for it. You stop placing it somewhere beyond your reach. In your mind, it already belongs to you, and that feeling of ownership changes everything. Pay attention to how your thoughts shift when something genuinely feels like it's already yours. There's no desperation, no urgency, no fear that you'll miss your chance. There's only quiet confidence. Confidence isn't something you force yourself to have. It arises naturally when ownership has been accepted. A homeowner doesn't wake up each morning wondering if they deserve their house. You don't question whether your own name belongs to you. Ownership creates certainty, and certainty is one of the strongest expressions of a fulfilled state. Consciousness. And consciousness always expresses itself through your reality. Many people believe they must think positively every second of the day, but that only creates unnecessary pressure. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is identification. Old thoughts may still appear out of habit, but they lose their influence the moment you stop claiming them as your own. Their presence doesn't define you unless you choose to identify with them. Think of an actor performing on stage. Even though they remember who they really are, they stay committed to the character until the performance is over. In the same way, old patterns of thinking may briefly surface, but you don't have to return to them. Simply notice them, let them pass, and gently return to the reality you've chosen to remember. Do it again and again, not with frustration or force, but with calm consistency. Every time you return to that fulfilled state, you strengthen it. Every return makes it feel more familiar. Every return allows your new identity to become more natural than the old one. Eventually, there comes a moment when this new version of yourself feels more real than the person you used to believe you were. When that happens, something remarkable changes within you. You stop asking whether the process is working. You stop constantly looking for signs or checking the outside world for proof. Your desire becomes so real in your own consciousness that external confirmation is no longer necessary. Ironically, this is often when physical evidence begins to appear. Why? Because you've released resistance. You're no longer pushing your desire away through doubt, worry, or endless observation. You've accepted it inwardly, and acceptance itself is a creative force. Think about how often people delay their own fulfillment simply by asking, "Where is it?" Every time you ask where it is, you're assuming it isn't here. Every time you ask when it will happen, you're declaring that it hasn't happened yet. Every time you wonder why it hasn't appeared, you're reinforcing the belief that you're still waiting. Consciousness accepts those assumptions and faithfully reflects them. The outer world doesn't decide whether your assumptions are good or bad. It simply mirrors whatever you consistently accept as true. That's why your responsibility isn't to hunt for evidence. Your responsibility is to remain loyal to the reality you've already remembered, even when your senses seem to tell a different story. This is the point where many people give up. They begin with enthusiasm. They imagine clearly. They embrace the fulfilled state. But then an unexpected circumstance appears that seems to contradict everything they believed. Immediately, they abandon their new identity. Old fears return. They interpret temporary appearances as proof that nothing has changed. But appearances are often nothing more than the final echoes of old assumptions. What you see today may simply be the delayed result of yesterday's consciousness, rather than the reflection of who you are choosing to be now. Once you understand this, patience becomes much easier. Temporary setbacks no longer cause panic because you recognize them for what they are, old shadows passing across the screen. They don't change the deeper truth. The reality you've accepted within remains untouched. The fulfilled state is still alive in your consciousness, and because it is alive, it continues moving toward physical expression. Learn to trust what exists within before you trust what appears without. Not because the visible world has no value, but because it is always the effect, never the cause. Every physical experience begins with an invisible source. Every circumstance is born from consciousness. Every achievement first exists as an accepted assumption before it becomes a visible fact. Every lasting change begins with identity. The invisible always comes before the visible. Once you truly understand this, you experience a new kind of freedom. You stop feeling like life is happening to you and realize you have the ability to choose the state you live from. At any moment, you can withdraw your attention from one identity and place it into another. You can leave behind the mindset of lack and step into abundance. You can release fear and embrace confidence. You can move beyond loneliness and live from the feeling of love. These states aren't physical places you have to reach. They're ways of being. The moment you occupy a different state within yourself, your outer world begins adjusting to reflect that decision. People often ask how long it will take for their desire to appear. But that question overlooks the most important transformation. The real change happens the instant your new state is fully accepted. What later appears in the physical world is simply the delayed reflection of an inner shift that has already taken place. The greatest miracle isn't when circumstances change, it's when your consciousness changes. Once that happens, the outcome has already been set in motion. You don't need to know every step ahead. You don't have to figure out how everything will happen, who will be involved, or which opportunities will appear. That isn't your responsibility. The creative intelligence behind life naturally takes care of the path. Your only task is to accept the fulfilled state. The details belong to a wisdom far greater than the logical mind. Trying to control every part of the journey usually creates unnecessary resistance. When you're attached to one specific way, something must happen. You close yourself off from countless other possibilities. But reality has endless ways of bringing your desire into your life. The fulfilled state isn't concerned with limitations or methods. It only knows the completed result. When you genuinely remember that your desire already belongs to you, you stop obsessing over how it will arrive. You allow life to surprise you. You allow events to unfold naturally, instead of trying to force them. You become open to opportunities your logical mind could never have predicted. And because you're no longer interrupting the process with constant doubt and overthinking, everything begins flowing much more easily. Your desire starts creating its own path into your experience. You notice conversations that seem perfectly timed. Invitations appear unexpectedly. New opportunities emerge from places you never considered. Many people call these moments luck, coincidence, or perfect timing. But beneath those appearances, a deeper principle is quietly at work. That principle is simple. Consciousness always expresses itself. The state you consistently occupy determines the experiences that come into your life. Every time you return to the feeling that your desire is already fulfilled, you strengthen the connection between the unseen and the seen. That bridge isn't built through struggle or force. It's built through familiarity. Whatever you repeatedly accept as true becomes familiar. What becomes familiar starts feeling natural. And whatever feels natural eventually becomes part of your reality. This is why the greatest transformations often appear effortless to everyone watching from the outside. They notice the results, but they never see the quiet inner moments when someone repeatedly chose a new identity until it became their normal way of being. Many people expect personal transformation to happen through one dramatic breakthrough. They imagine a powerful emotional experience, a sudden burst of certainty, or a single life-changing moment where every doubt disappears forever. While experiences like that can happen, they aren't necessary. More often, change unfolds quietly. A new belief is accepted. It is revisited again and again. Day by day, it becomes more comfortable, more familiar, and more believable. Then one morning, you realize your thinking has changed without effort. The old version of yourself no longer feels natural. Old fears begin losing their influence. Old limitations stop feeling convincing. A new identity has quietly taken root. The process is much like moving into a new home. At first, everything feels unfamiliar. The rooms seem different, and nothing feels completely comfortable. But as time passes, what once seemed strange becomes completely normal. Before long, you move through it effortlessly because it has become your new reality. Before long, you reach a point where you can't imagine living any other way. The same thing happens when you settle into a new state of consciousness. At first, it may feel unfamiliar to think of yourself as successful while your circumstances still look the same. It may feel strange to see yourself as deeply loved when there seems to be no visible evidence. It may even feel unnatural to identify as prosperous while your finances tell a different story. But if you remain loyal to that new state, it eventually becomes your normal. And once it feels like home, your outer world begins reflecting that inner home. Many people make the mistake of leaving too soon. They step into the fulfilled state for a short time. But the moment something appears to contradict it, they return to their old way of thinking. Imagine planting a seed and walking away from the garden because nothing sprouted overnight. That would seem unreasonable in nature, yet people do the same thing psychologically every day. They accept a new reality within themselves, then immediately question whether it's working. They remain in the fulfilled state for an hour, then spend the rest of the day living from doubt and lack. They remember briefly, then spend far longer forgetting. Consciousness always reflects the state you occupy most consistently. The identity you return to again and again becomes the life you experience again and again. That's why consistency matters much more than intensity. A peaceful assumption maintained over time carries far more creative power than a burst of excitement followed by uncertainty. A quiet confidence that remains steady is stronger than temporary inspiration that quickly fades. Reality responds to who you consistently believe yourself to be, not to the emotions you occasionally experience. One of the simplest practices is also one of the most powerful. Throughout your day, pause and ask yourself, If my desire were already a completed fact, how would I see this moment? How would I interpret this situation? How would I respond to this conversation? How would I feel about tomorrow? That single question gently shifts your awareness from wanting to having. It moves you from seeking into being, and being is where creation begins. Imagine someone who longs to be free from financial stress. If they continue viewing every situation through fear and scarcity, they remain identified with lack. But when they begin seeing life from the perspective of someone who is already secure, their thoughts, reactions, expectations, and decisions naturally begin to change. As the source changes, the outer world gradually reflects that transformation. The same principle applies to every area of life. The state of health thinks differently than the state of illness. The state of confidence sees life differently than the state of insecurity. The state of fulfillment responds differently than the state of longing. Whenever you step into a new state, you also inherit its perspective. You begin looking at life through different eyes. You interpret situations according to new assumptions. And because your interpretation changes, your experience changes with it. People often overlook how powerful interpretation really is. Two people can experience exactly the same event and walk away with completely different realities because each one views it through a different state of consciousness. One sees a delay and assumes failure. Another sees the same delay and believes everything is unfolding at the right time. One meets a challenge and expects defeat. Another sees the challenge as preparation for something greater. One experiences silence and feels rejected. Another experiences silence and trusts that unseen movement is already taking place. Very often, the event itself matters far less than the state from which it is interpreted. That's why it's far more important to protect your state than to obsess over your circumstances. Circumstances are only effects. Your state is the cause. Effects constantly change, but the cause continues creating. Whenever discouragement begins to appear, don't make your circumstances the center of your attention. Instead, return to the state you've chosen. Return to the memory of fulfillment. Return to the quiet knowing that it is already complete. You're not ignoring reality. You are choosing the deeper reality that exists before physical evidence appears. That inner reality is the very thing that eventually produces the evidence you seek. There is tremendous power in refusing to let appearances define who you are. Most people allow external conditions to tell them what to believe about themselves. When life goes well, they feel confident. When circumstances become difficult, they lose faith in themselves. In that way, their identity is controlled by appearances. The creative approach turns that pattern upside down. Identity comes first. Circumstances follow. You decide who you are within, and then allow the outer world to reflect that decision. This takes courage because it requires trusting what cannot yet be seen. It asks you to honor your consciousness, even when your senses report something different. It asks you to remain faithful to an invisible reality until it naturally becomes visible. Every meaningful achievement follows this same pattern. Every invention existed in someone's imagination before it became reality. Every masterpiece first lived as a vision before it took physical form. Every personal transformation began in consciousness long before it appeared in experience. The visible world is always the final stage of creation. The beginning is always acceptance. That acceptance doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be as simple as a peaceful moment before falling asleep, a brief imaginal scene filled with love, or a quiet feeling of gratitude for something your eyes cannot yet see. It is the gentle knowing that your desired reality already belongs to you. These moments may seem insignificant, but they carry tremendous creative power because they reach the deeper levels of consciousness. Whatever is impressed upon the subconscious with genuine feeling seeks expression in the outer world. This is why the moments before sleep are so valuable. As your mind relaxes, the barrier between conscious effort and subconscious acceptance becomes much thinner. Assumptions planted during this quiet state often sink deeper into consciousness. If, before sleep, you experience the feeling that your desire has already been fulfilled, that impression continues working within you where creation quietly begins. Don't worry about making the experience perfect. Perfection isn't the goal. Naturalness is. What matters is the feeling that it is real. A simple imaginal scene accepted with conviction is often far more powerful than complicated techniques performed without belief. There is enormous power in simplicity. The mind enjoys making things complicated because complexity creates the illusion of control. But creation itself is remarkably simple. Assume the fulfilled state. Accept it as true. Remain faithful to it. Return to it whenever necessary. People spend years searching for a secret technique, yet the real secret has always been identity. Who are you choosing to be? Which version of yourself are you identifying with? What reality are you accepting as true? Every answer you give shapes the creative power already operating within you. Since consciousness is always expressing itself, those answers eventually become the experiences of your life. There is never a moment when you are not creating. Even fear creates, worry creates, doubt creates. Not because those emotions have power on their own, but because they are built upon assumptions. Fear assumes danger. Worry expects unwanted outcomes. Doubt assumes uncertainty. When those assumptions become habitual, life naturally reflects them. The beautiful truth is that the very same law that produces unwanted experiences can also create the life you desire. The law is completely impartial. It doesn't reward or punish. It simply reflects whatever you consistently accept as true. Instead of fighting unwanted states, replace them. Don't argue with fear. Step into confidence. Don't battle scarcity. Move into abundance. Don't wrestle with uncertainty. Choose the quiet certainty of knowing. Each time you withdraw your attention from one state and place it into another, you strengthen your new identity. Little by little, that new state becomes more familiar. Little by little, it becomes your dominant way of being. Little by little, it begins reshaping your world. Then one day, what once existed only in your imagination stands before you as physical reality. Not because you forced it into existence, not because you struggled hard enough, and not because you somehow convinced the universe to cooperate. It appears because you remembered your desired reality so consistently that your consciousness accepted it as true and naturally expressed it through life itself. And when that moment finally arrives, something remarkable often happens. Instead of feeling shocked, you feel recognition. Instead of disbelief, you experience quiet certainty. Rather than overwhelming excitement, there's a peaceful sense that this was always meant to unfold this way. Deep inside, it already feels familiar because you experienced it inwardly long before you saw it outwardly. That realization reveals one of creation's greatest mysteries. The future you long for was never truly far away. It existed as a state waiting for you to enter. It existed as an identity waiting to be accepted. It existed as a reality waiting to be remembered. Every time you return to that inner knowing, you weren't moving closer to your desire. You were moving deeper into it, allowing it to become more natural, more real, and more powerful than any appearance trying to convince you otherwise. So tonight, stop asking life for permission to become who you were created to be. Stop waiting for proof before you choose to believe. Stop allowing today's circumstances to define tomorrow's possibilities. The world around you is not the cause of your life. It is the reflection of what you have already accepted within yourself. The moment you truly understand this, everything begins to change. You stop chasing your desires because you realize they were never separate from you. You stop struggling to manifest because you recognize that creation is already complete. You no longer live as someone hoping for a better future. You live as someone remembering a fulfilled reality. The greatest secret is this: what you seek is already seeking expression through you. Wealth, love, success, freedom, purpose. They are not distant dreams waiting somewhere ahead. They are states of consciousness waiting for your acceptance. The door has never been closed. The power has never left you. The reality has never been missing. The only thing that was missing was your recognition of it. So leave this moment with a new understanding. Whenever doubt appears, remember. Whenever fear arises, remember. Whenever circumstances seem to challenge your vision, remember. Return again and again to the quiet certainty that it is already complete. Not because you are pretending, but because you're awakening to a truth that has always existed. The day you stop trying to manifest and begin remembering is the day you stop watching life from the sidelines and begin consciously creating it. Stay faithful to that remembrance, and your world will inevitably reflect the person you have chosen to become. Your desired future is not waiting somewhere ahead of you. It already belongs to you. Remember it.